Hello everyone, and welcome to another Learning to Fly with Nikki, Batgirl D'Angelo. Today's flight is going to take us from Cobb McCollum over in Kennesaw up to Cherokee. That's a short flight. It primarily follows the interstate in the area, 575. The reason I'm making this flight, again, is because I'm trying to get to the 3 hours to allow me to do the solo flight. Or I should say the light aircraft pilot license check ride. I'm trying to take you through this whole thing so you can get an idea of what this game is about. And if you've ever thought about flying in flight simulators, with Dovetail Games Flight Simulator coming out later in the year, X-Plane all of a sudden becoming really big, P3D, or Prepared, from Lockheed, starting to become more popular, and of course other flight sims like DCS World and IL2 becoming more popular, I thought it would be nice to showcase this particular game for those of you that want to get into sims, so you know that you have something that could actually teach you how to fly. As we've done in previous videos, we're getting right into the aircraft. We're already on the runway, and I think I found a way to start in a different place. But I don't believe that there's real startup procedures here for the Super Cub or the Piper Cherokee 180 inside this game. So I think it's just about flying. This is what this game's trying to teach you. In the next episode, I actually discover ATC and start using it in a semi-right way, semi-correct way, according to how this particular sim is using it. And like I said, this is a lot like Microsoft Flight Simulator. It is kind of the in-between game. This is filling the gap between the last version of Microsoft Flight Simulator and the next version of Flight Simulator, which would be called Dovetail Games Flight Simulator. Of course, Dovetail Games has licensed the product from Microsoft. I do not believe that they purchased it, and hopefully they do the product justice. Right now, I could tell you, no crashes, no real technical issues. I had a problem with the flight model, but worked that out in my own head. Graphics are a little bit weird, like the shadows not having aliasing, but these are things that will be worked out over time. There are more aircraft coming for this game. Eventually we'll be able to learn how to fly multi-engine aircraft, and that's something that will be coming in the near future. So we've flown up to right around 2,500, which puts us about 1,500 feet above the ground. I want to fly at this height because it essentially gives you the best view out the cockpit as I'm talking to you. So the easiest way to get to Cherokee is to fly and to pick up 575. And again, there's no real great scenery in here, but it looks like they are using Orbix to auto-generate scenery, and the auto-gen scenery looks fairly decent. So we've flown out to 575, and we have intersected it, and now we're just going to start following it north. This is an easy one. Had I gotten the ATC down, I would have known what the active runway was over at CNI. I don't know what it is, so I'm going to just land on the most logical runway, which is one I think that just goes, I think it runs about 050 degrees, so runway 5. So it's a short flight, though this is going to take about 20 minutes in each direction, and it does cross over a lot of the area that I live in for real. So like right now, we've intersected the exit where Kennesaw State is, which is on the same road as Cobb McCollum. And as we fly north, we're going to pass places like Bells Ferry Road, we're going to pass 92, Town Lake Parkway, which is right off of where I live, Ridge Walk, and we're going to have exit 11, which is Sixes Road, and Holly Springs at exit 14, then 140 on exit 16, and then we're going to pass 20, which is exit 19, and then just north of that is going to be the airport. So you're looking at coming out at exit 3 and going up to about exit 23. So it's a 20-mile route in each direction. So it's going to be about a 40 to 45 mile round trip. And that's going to make this about a 40 to 45 minute flight. You say, well, if you're traveling 90 knots, which is almost 100 miles an hour, how is it a 40 to 45 minute trip? You got to remember, at the other airport there is a landing, and it's a landing to a full stop, so I get credit. You got to remember that there is taxiing and that there's approach and departure. Both of those are a lot slower. Plus there's maneuvering in the patterns. So we're coming over what I believe is 92. I think that's Town Lake Parkway is the next exit north. Trying to get a gist of where we're at, because this is a little bit more of a sightseeing trip for me than it probably is for you. You could see the mountains in the distance. Georgia's very hilly in the north. Very hilly. The foothills of the Smoky Mountains are pretty much the area that is north of Atlanta. And as you travel northeast into Georgia, you get into even more mountainous areas. Some pretty areas too. If you ever get a chance to go out to Helen, that's where they have Oktoberfest in this area. Although that area is a little bit over commercialized though, it does look like it was a town that was ripped right out of Bavaria. And like I said, it's a little commercialized. Alright, so we are coming a little bit north, and I'm starting to look for the airport. We are flying rather rapidly. Alrighty, let's see where we're going. Now this is where I start to... The 575 isn't a straight road. Most roads are not straight. They turn around different landmarks. They turn around different natural boundaries. And in this case, 575 is kind of like... It makes left turns and right turns as you see it from the air. And I think I'm starting to see where the airport is. It's going to be just a little bit north, and it's going to be west of 575. It kind of runs parallels to 575. Runs parallel. Yep. And we're still a little ways out, but we're no more than 10 miles out. Now you would start to see that the field to the north, that's what some people would think it is in the simulator. It's a lot easier to see this thing in real life. What are those two handles? Wow. Alright, so pretty flight, right? Nice and easy. Not a big deal going on here. Just nice, simple flight. So I think I have the airport just off the nose in between the spar, the strut. Sorry, it's not a spar, it's a strut. Yeah, it's over there to the left. Okay. Not that far. We're looking at the lake. Okay, now I know where we are. We're just passing over New River. So the next exit is exit 11. So we are just about 10 miles out. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to see it in the haze that we have out right now. Still pushing north. You know, these flights that I make here, the next flight that I make is going to be back in my hometown. I live here in Georgia, but my heart is always going to be on Long Island. It's tough to live on Long Island because it's so expensive. But I do fly out of Islip MacArthur on the next one and fly up to Bridgeport. And you can see why flying up there was so much prettier and so much more fulfilling. When you would land, you would have seen quite a lot. Here in Georgia, you see trees, and there's nothing wrong with that, so I'm not faulting it. I did love flying here too. It's just, I really loved flying in Long Island. So I'm going to start doing the next couple of flights on Long Island, because what I'm setting up for is that solo flight. That first solo flight that I've done. I'm going to do that right after the check ride. Even though I've done solo flights here, I'm going to make a ride from, or a flight from, Islip MacArthur over to Gobreski and then back again and talk to you about that day. It was actually pretty fun. I was in an aircraft with my instructor, and he was instructing me and the owner of Metro Aircraft Rental's daughter. I believe her name was Rory. It's so long ago. If I get her name wrong, I deserve hell, but I believe her name was Rory Humphreys. I will remember this at some point. Rory doesn't sound right, but I will remember it. It started with a D, and it was weird. Not weird, but different. Anyway, we went up for some touch and goes, and then he took us out, or told us to head out to Gabreski, and I will tell you the rest of the story in the next episode, because it was pretty awesome. Alright, we are seeing... I think I see it. It's up. You see how the road turns off to the east, or off to the right. I think that's actually off to the north. And it's going to be just north of that turn, and just above the right strut, you can start to see a white light, and I believe that's where the airport is. Okay, we're going to be coming into that rather quickly now. So the whole idea here is that I'm going to land on runway 5 because we took off at runway 9, so theoretically the winds are coming out of the east. Theoretically, in a perfect world that would be cool, but in Georgia that would be totally off. We would probably be using 2.7 most of the time. We would be using 2.7 most of the time. So this one, we should be using 2.3, I think it is, 5 and 2.3. Does that sound right? Yeah, I think that is. We should be using 2.3. So there's where it turns to the north. And it wasn't that area. I am just stupid. Or maybe it is. Let's see if I made that mistake twice. This road turns twice. No, I think I was right, and I've already passed it by because I'm starting to go on the other side. So I should be pointing right at the airport. You'll see it right over the nose now. Just to the left. Right up north. Just taking a look at the scenery. Like I said, not perfect scenery here, but it is pretty. Yes, there it is. It's now off of the right wing. Straight north of the right wing. Okay. It was where I thought it was. I'm using a cursor to point to it, and I'm doing post, and you can't see it. There's a field just above the right strut, and then just north of that field, it's kind of north and a little bit west, is a strip pointing up towards the mountains, and that will be it. And we're going to fly towards the open field, then take a left turn, intercept base, and then land straight in on runway 5 over at CNI. This is a lot of how VFR goes when you're flying, and a lot of it is by sight. Having a sectional and a GPS is good. I think that when you learn to fly, they're going to teach you to use a sectional because aircraft equipment fails. And if a GPS fails, knowing how to use the other instruments in your aircraft and a sectional are going to get you home safe. It's amazing how much this weather system looks like it does most days here. It could be clear, but there's always this haze in Georgia, and it's just humid all the time, so you always have this like obscured sky. So we're starting to put our nose towards that airfield, and it's just going to be a straight in approach. We're going to land, we're going to turn around, and we're going to go home. So I think for the return route, what we'll do is we'll pick it up on final so we don't go too much over 20 minutes this time. Or not final, but close to the airport. Nice, easy flight. These are my favorite types of flights because it is teaching you a couple of things that you don't realize. Now I've turned some more realism settings on. I did turned up the realism on the torque of the prop. So I have most of this flight been using a little bit of rudder to keep it correct and going straight. It's kind of like you'll see it on the runway that when I do add full throttle, I do have to add a little bit more rudder. And I have added or upped the realism on hard landings, so it will start to see some of those really hard landings I've made as crashes. Now this is a forgiving aircraft. The Piper is a little bit less, or the Piper Cherokee is a little bit less forgiving. Alright, now it's time to descend to pattern altitude. Come on. Alright, so chucking the power back a little bit, 1900, pulling it back a little bit more. You can see the RPM indicator just to the right of the compass. We're maintaining about a 500 foot per minute descent, lining up on the runway for our straight-in approach. I wasn't sure what the altitude was at this airport, and I want to make sure that I look, because we might be making this again. In the next certification that we go for, we need 5 hours of solo flight. I'm not sure what certifications they're going to add to this game later. My guess would be, with Dovetail Games being such a, I don't want to say microtransaction, but they do sell a lot of trains for their train simulator, so I would guess they would sell more lessons. They'll get you through the basic lessons for the $15, and $15 so far for this game is going to be a steal. I didn't realize how much of the world was mapped, but my guess would be they add in certifications like instrument, and hopefully they add in something like commercial, and I don't believe you'll see ATP in this. If you want to get an airline transport pilot, you'll want to buy some of the much more capable add-ons for Flight Simulator and X-Plane for that. This landing looks like it's going to be good. I can't remember it. Let's see, we're down at 1400, we have flaps in. There are a couple of things we are not doing in this one. We're not fixing our mixture as soon as we get up to altitude. That is something that you would want to do in a plane like this. You don't want to foul your plugs. You want to run the mixture a little bit leaner as you get up to altitude. Alright. Not the higher you go. Alright, we've made the numbers. We're going to come down just a little bit. And we're going to start a flare right over the number. There we go. There's our flare. And, oh, we squeaked it right in. That was pretty good. That was a nice landing. Starting to get used to this aircraft. I think that last episode was instrumental in teaching me how to fly this aircraft. Knowing the stall characteristics, like I said, and knowing the maneuverability of your aircraft is important, and it's something you should always do. And I think that's why I am sure that's why they have you check out an aircraft before you actually are allowed to fly it. Alright, we came around. We would have held short there and called our taxi. This is a Unicom airport, so you would be calling yourself on base, final, and departure. Taking the runway, taxiing, all sorts of things. So we will find the radio on the next episode and start using that, because it will be important. I think I'm going to set up each one of the different flights that we make from now on to start at the hangar or in general aviation parking, where we have to get the aircraft running. I'll learn how to do that. And then to call for taxi and takeoff instructions from the tower. Alright, so we're going to pass this 180 over here on the right. And we're going to take the runway, we're going to take off again, head south, and go back to where we came from. So right after the takeoff, we're going to go and pick it up on a approach into McCollum Airport. Alright, here we go. There's runway 5. Let's get on the runway. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to stop right here. And we are going to run up the aircraft. We're going to look at our just taking a look at our different instruments and our different controls. Runner up, full power. Engine seems to be okay. We pushed that forward and back just a little bit too fast. You don't want to do that. You will choke the aircraft's engine. You will foul the plugs. You want to do it a little bit smoother than I did it there. But this game is not modeling that at that point. So let's take to the air, get on our departure, and then start heading over towards Cobb McCollum. Let's stay on runway heading. This is a long runway. I wonder if they have some private jets that land here. It's a pretty airport because it's just before you start getting up towards the Jasper area. So there's lots of mountains and hills and some pretty green areas, lots of forests to look at. And one thing I can say is when you've seen one tree, you've seen them all. The forest is okay, but it is just a little bit too much green when you're looking for a lot more in the game. Oop. My microphone's starting to break my desk, but that won't go for long because we are getting a new desk next week. And then I will start streaming. Alright, let's stop here and pick it up on an approach into Cobb McCollum. You've seen the scenery. You probably have seen too much green, so let's go back, get this on the ground, and get ready for the next episode. Alright, here we are. There's Cobb McCollum off to our right. And what we've done here is we've decided that we're going to pick it up on a crosswind leg. So we're going to pick up the airport on the crosswind leg. We're going to wait until we're just about ready to turn on to our downwind leg. Again, we have not found ATC in the game yet, but actually it would have just been clicking on the view button in the upper left hand corner of the screen and choosing open radio panel or ATC panel. And then you could do nearest airport, approach control, you could do a couple of things there. It is rudimentary, but it works, and it does help with teaching the procedures for going in and out of aircraft. Helps. It's not perfect, but it does help, and it makes it a little bit more realistic as we go on from here with different lessons and different flights that we'll be making in the future. So we're on this crosswind leg, far away from the airport, because we want to give planes that are leaving the area an opportunity to climb above us. Of course, at this point we would be in full radar contact or possibly full visual contact with the airport. I do believe at Cobb McCollum you have the tower operator looking out the window with binoculars for you. I do not believe there is radar there like there was at Islip when I was flying there all my life, most of my life. So we're turning onto downwind. We see Kennesaw Mountain coming across our nose at about this point. Kennesaw Mountain, there was a huge battle there during the Civil War. And that is something that we could talk about another day if you want to know about it. It is the biggest historical site in this area. And of course, Lemon Mansion in Ackworth, where the Union Army had its headquarters. Okay, we are on downwind, and we are in contact with, theoretically, we're in contact with the tower at this point. We want to get down to pattern altitude, which now will be at 2,100 feet, I believe. So I found that the airport is at 1,100 feet. So we want to maintain that descent rate to enter the pattern, 90 knots, pattern airspeed, 2,100 feet, pattern altitude. We want to start making sure that we have the discipline to fly our patterns right. And I am going to make mistakes in the future. It is a flight simulator and not for real. And it's hard to keep those those visual landmarks in your head when you're talking about auto-generated scenery. If we were able to load our own scenery, obviously we would have the same landmark in the same place all the time. So we're coming over 75, not 575, but 75. This over here is the Barrett Parkway exit. So this would be all commercial buildings all over here. The exit to the north of here would be Chastain Road, and that would be the road that the airport is off of, the road that runs along the northern side of the airport. There would not be water to the right of the airport either. There is a huge granite pit, cement pit, whatever you want to call it. The road that we're going to be crossing in just a second is 41, the road made famous by the Allman Brothers in Ramblin' Man. I'm sure it was made famous long before that, but we seem to be a little bit close in. We should just be a little bit further to the left of the field. So we're going to have a really tight turn here. We're at pattern altitude, of course. So we did make pattern altitude before we entered downwind, sorry. And this is where I keep making the mistake. I want to express that the biggest problem I have with this is that there's a long threshold for jets that take off. It's not there for landing, which makes no sense to me. They should just make the airport runway longer. There's a large threshold for jets to take off, and really where the numbers are, that's where you want to land. So right there is where the numbers are, so that's where you should be chalking the throttle. And the throttle's coming down, as you see. I'm down at 20, 15 is coming up, and then 14. We want to maintain 70 to 75 knots in our descent. Ooh, we pulled back a little hard on that. Push forward, maintain that speed. And we should have been making our turn at this point because the numbers, there we are off to our 45 degrees. So we're going to start doing standard rate turns to turn this thing around. When you're going low and slow, you don't want to make any huge maneuvers that are going to cause you to stall. This altitude, recovering from a stall, is just cleaning up the aircraft. Well, it's controls to neutral, full power, positive climb, clean up the aircraft. Clean up the aircraft means pull the flaps back. You don't want to pull the flaps back when you stall. You'll stall harder. Flaps essentially allow you to fly at a slower stall speed. So if you stall at 70, you probably could stall at like 60 or 55 knots or less. This aircraft probably stalls somewhere around 45. That's what we found out the last time. Alright, and there are the numbers. Like I said, really long threshold down here. And we've got the runway made. We're going to lower our nose just a little bit. We're right on that center line, using rudder to keep us on the center. I don't know if you can see that with the turn and slip indicator, which is the furthest most right instrument on the top of the panel. Alright, we are right over the numbers in just a second, so we're starting our flare, and squeaked it in. That was not a bad landing. Alright folks, this is essentially what we're doing and what you will have to do to get your light aircraft pilot's license inside of Dovetail Games Flight School. I don't know how popular this game is or it's going to be. I'm finding it rather refreshing to be in a sim that's teaching me how to fly again. And it's not so bad. Like I said, a solid B- to B+, depending on the lessons and missions I've been taking. It could be a lot better. It may get better over time if they listen to those of us that are talking about it. But personally, I think that for $15, it's worth a buy. I'm going to continue this series until we're done with all the lessons and gotten all the ratings. I think that might mean that we will be continuing it when the Diamond Star, the A42, is actually released for the game. My guess is that that's going to be put into the game for a multi-engine certification, which I can't wait to get. Alright. I'm going to park it over here because I don't know where else to park it. And in the next episode, what we find is that there is progressive parking, just like there was inside of Flight Simulator. And when you park it where they tell you to park it, you actually start getting those messages of how many times you parked the airplane. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to shut down the aircraft semi-right. You'll notice I pulled the mixture all the way out. Nothing happened. I may set up one of the axes of the buttons on, well, the wheels on the throttle to do mixture so I could start playing with that. But folks, that's it. That's the whole video. We went about 35 minutes. I'm sorry about that. But I enjoyed this flight. So until next time, you all be safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.